it's quite interesting and surprising for me. Like, how would you trust someone making a $500,000, $1 million transaction decision for you when they've been 5 minutes in this space and they've never done major transactions themselves, right? So I say this out loud to everyone out there, that picture a buyer's agent who is buying a property a day versus picture a buyer's agent who have bought 2 properties in their lifetime, right? Like, there's a massive difference between the networks, the experience, the potholes, the due diligence. There is so much that the property has to offer. And if you don't value the experience, then go for the cheapest tattoo, right? Co-living properties can generate almost $140,000 in passive income and net of $40,000 in passive income after mortgage repayments, and they sit in an average yield of about 10%. Hello and welcome to Help Me Buy Property podcast. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic on property investment and pro athletes and coaches. How are they different from commoners? What does their serviceability looks like? What does retirement means for them? And how does pro athletes and coaches think about property investing when they are living a very flash life? Now, in order for us to talk about this topic, I have my co-host today, Julian Fadini from PRPTY. Julian, how are you today, my friend?
I'm very well, Moss. Thank you for having me here. I've been looking forward to this event, actually, and this podcast and getting to meet you. I've been watching you for a while, so yeah it's great.
And you've been doing some amazing work. Look, I mean, this is an interesting niche, pro athletes and coaches. So let's start there. Are you a coach or a pro athlete? You have a height of a footballer, so that's definitely there.
Yeah, look, what I can tell you about my sporting prowess is that it wasn't very successful and it didn't carry me anywhere as far as the property investment business has, that's for sure. So yeah, no professional athlete background.
Okay. Well, you have the looks and the rights for it.
Yeah, I try to keep as fit as possible as I can. I subscribe to fitness and health, but not enough skill to make it as a pro.
Amazing. And so let's talk a bit about Property 360. Let's start there. So your niche in relation to pro athletes and coaches, I've not seen a lot of buyers agents play in that space. And so what got you in there?
Excellent question. Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of rugby league and growing up in Australia. Who's my team? South Sydney.
Ooh.
South Sydney, yeah. I try to be agnostic because we have players and coaches from different places, and sometimes the players in favour of the club and then there's out of favour with the club. But for the record now, everybody knows I'm a South Sydney fan.
South Sydney fan, yeah.
Awesome. So I grew up in Canberra, actually, in the ACT. And so, around the time of the 80s and 90s, the Canberra Raiders were the dominant team of the era. And so the population of Canberra was only around about 300,000 people at that period of time. And when the Raiders were going good, they used to attract crowds of 28,000 people to Bruce Stadium. Yeah. And so my passion for football and things like that started then, NRL. I went to St. Edmunds College, which is a rugby league school. Yeah. And it actually had a bit of a pedigree where it produced some athletes over time. Obviously not me, but yeah. And so it was from there and from the connections and people I went to school with that over time we developed into the sporting space. I'd been in business in the property space for probably around about 15 years.
Wow.
Before we got involved with athletes.
Yeah.
And what happened was we followed one of our clients to a club, the West Tigers, and he was a coach of the West Tigers at the time. And then we started to meet the other people that are involved in a professional athlete and coach's life.
Yeah.
And what we were talking about is hey, look, these young kids are going to pay almost the same amount of tax in their career as they will earn.
Yeah.
So there was also at a period of time the NRL governing body wanted to make sure that there was more effort put into managing these young players' financial affairs, making sure that they didn't end up without any money at the end of their career.
Yeah.
And so the timing seemed to be quite well, and that resonated with a few people within the industry and with some of the people that we dealt with. And it was from there that we started providing the education piece about, hey guys, look, this is how much you're earning, this is how much tax you're paying over 10 years. If you get a 10-year career, that's a great going for a professional athlete in rugby league these days. So how about this as an option? And the old way of thinking and the old way of the game's progressively changing quite a bit at the moment. So the old way of thinking was that the player might get their first big contract, let's just say, for example, in Canterbury with the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So some of the advice back then was, hey, right, you got this big contract, go buy the biggest house that you can in the local area.
Yes.
Right? Now, these are young kids, right? So they're great young kids in their early 20s. But so what happens then? So they're at the moment, they're focusing on their football. They're really good at football because that's what they've focused on for growing up. So they get the house.
Yeah.
And then they've gone from renting with their mates and they've got this big house. So then comes the parties. Yeah, some parties. Yeah, possibly. Fortunately, most of the athletes that we work with are very, very well behaved. But then what happens is then that athlete has a lifespan perhaps at Canterbury Bulldogs. Now, a player manager's job is to ensure that they're getting the best deal and getting the most out of that player's ability to earn and to grow as an athlete. And so if they put down their roots in Canterbury, for example, and the best money is actually and the best pathway for the career is in Brisbane, they can be tied to those areas. However, when you talk with property investors like ourselves and people with knowledge and the rest of it, sometimes buying the big asset is not the way to wealth.
Yeah, of course.
So, and it depends on the background of the player and the rest of it. So what we say is like, hey, guys, look, this is what you can do with your money in terms of building a portfolio, and you don't have to be tied down. Now, come to the end of your career, you could have 5, 10, 12, 15 properties behind you, and your income will go, most times, the majority of players will come off their last salary and probably the next few years will probably be a little bit lighter in terms of income.
Yeah.
So at that point in time when the income's down, the properties that you bought at the beginning of your career, they could be sold, pay down some debt in the others, and then you've got some money in the bank. Maybe you want to travel, maybe you want to go to university, maybe you want to get involved with the church or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
These are the options that we can provide you. Buy a gym, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that really resonated. And then that's our education piece. That's what we're talking about. Like we want these young guys to make the most of that period of time. And the tax rate,
it would be horrendous, right?
Horrendous.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
Be like at 45% tax, and so
they're the highest tax bracket.
Yeah.
So you look at the contract and you look at it and you go, wow, that's
the amount of money they get in the bank is the amount of money the tax office makes out of them as well, right?
Yeah,
pretty much, right?
Yeah. And look, don't get me wrong, we're not advocating for those types of things, but it's just a very short period of time when you consider how long people work for these days.
Of course,
that is a short period of time that they're in business, that they're working for. So let's make the most out of it.
And it makes total sense, right? What you're doing is you're basically navigating their finances and saying, hey, you're not making a truckload of money for the rest of your life, and so while you are, how about you use this to build asset that can grow in value so that you can use that to create a real lifestyle after this 10, 15 years of facade has basically died, right?
Yeah.
And I'm calling it facade in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm doing that is it's a fad because it's a period of 6 years of 8 years of glory. And then after that, the real life starts. This is where they become the commoners, right?
Yeah.
You know, is that okay? Am I right in saying that?
Like commoner, sure. But also I see these young boys, they work extremely hard
of course.
In that period of time. Some of the injuries that they encounter and recover from, it's incredible. So but it's about giving them options, and what I've found is they're so open and really receptive to it. The majority of our
amazing. I would have thought that it would be the other way around, right? Because as a young person, I would be like, if I had like $1 million contract or a $2 million contract a year, I'd be like, stuff the investments. I'm going to go party like crazy, right? So it's quite interesting that you say that these people have better financial acumen in place than me in my 20s. But it's amazing. I think there is a lot of work that you and the team and the people around them have done in making sure that the same mistakes are not made as to what people were making the mistakes in the 80s, right?
100%. And it just happens that our exposure is to NRL and rugby union, small amounts of rugby union.
Yeah.
But when you consider other athletes, boxers, Mike Tyson's a great example of somebody who had an
amazing
incredible amount of wealth.
Yeah.
And went to zero and has recovered.
Yes.
But there wouldn't be that many people that recover.
Yeah.
But there's a huge difference between America and Australia, because company success stories in America, there's a lot of company success stories, whereas in Australia, the winning game, or the game that people feel most confident with, it's the property game.
Yes.
That's where...
Yeah. That's the love of property and nothing else, right? No one talks about passive income from any other means, right? It's just property and nothing else.
Yeah, it's that fever pitch at the moment.
That's true.
Like, as we were just discussing before off camera, like it's that fever pitch at the moment. Yeah.
And look, I mean, it does get me nervous. And for people who know me very closely, I don't only do property. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, right? I have 19 different businesses that creates passive income for me right at this stage. And so property is just one of them. And so I'm a big advocate of people creating passive income across the whole property portfolio, across their portfolio of investments, right? And that means starting a business, because businesses do generate great amount of ROI, right? So it's important for people to definitely consider various different means of creating passive income. And of course, property remains at the fair center, and it's easy, it's passive, it's always grows up in value. You don't have to do much about it. So it makes total sense that people naturally default to property. But if you have a little bit of risk appetite, there are so many startups that are happening in Australia right now. You'd be surprised as to how well they're doing and how good they're doing. So Yeah. And I think that's a completely separate episode. We could probably run it.
Probably could, but it makes a very valid point, which is property for the sake of property. Is the reason why we're using property is that when the players come to us, they're starting out at the beginning of their career,
yes,
and they have a small amount of money.
Yes, of course.
Their savings, their initial contracts are a standard Australian wage.
Yes.
And then they go from that to 180 on the low end to as high as $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 or even more in some very rare cases.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's how that gives it them.
Is that all an athlete would be paid in Australia? Like a person who's playing AFL or NRL, you would have expected that it would have paid more than $600,000-$700,000.
So we again, our exposure is to NRL,
sure,
and a very small amount of rugby union. You know, $1 million in rugby league is a very small portion per annum. It's a very small portion of professional players.
Okay, very interesting. And so, good segue. How does an investment for a pro athlete differs to a commoner?
Yeah,
would they buy something different? They are cash focused and passive income focused. Would they buy a different product?
Yeah, I really love this question because it plays out across not only athletes but all sorts of clients.
100%.
Yeah. So if you're on 45, if you're in the highest tax bracket, and we go out,
depreciation is basically what you wanted to basically tap into, right?
If we go out and buy cash flow positive assets,
more cash, more
so
tax.
this is more cash, more tax, right? But you've got to take the individual profile of the client into the circumstances.
Of course,
it turns out with us, our players are at the beginning of their career, so income is high, sure, but starting out they don't have a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
So
savings is not great, but the cash that they're generating is basically great.
Yeah, perfect, because they're in their early 20s.
Yeah, but then they're not spending a lot of that money as well, right? So they can save pretty fast as well. Is that right?
Yeah, can save very fast.
Yes.
Yeah, very fast, and and full credit to the clubs and the managers and all the good people out there in that space is that they keep the guys on the right track, you know, and they're very aware of the challenges that are out there and the invaders of the individual wealth of these young kids. Yeah, so there's a lot of support around them. But yeah, exactly. So it's more about getting that asset base as broad as we can. We're not ignoring cash flow altogether, but it's a mixture of both. But we've focused more on capital appreciation. We really want those properties to do a lot of heavy lifting for the players in that career period of time, so that they start their career with their savings of X amount of dollars, which we convert into maybe anything from $600,000 to $1 million purchase. Yeah. So we want them to have a few $1 million on retirement.
Yeah. And so you would be more focused on metros like Sydney and Melbourne and Perth, for example, specifically metro, because there is mature growth coming out of some of these areas.
Yeah. Look, we've been fortunately enough for myself being in this business for a long period of time, having great networks and a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. Yeah, definitely the metros. Our focus mostly with Property 360 is East Coast.
Ah, cool. Okay.
So we know there's we know the West Coast's there, and we know everybody loves the West Coast. Property 360 doesn't. Our focus is more on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's been consistent growth coming out of East Coast as well, so which is great, right?
Yeah.
And so how does bank looks at some of these athletes? Like, how does the servicing works? Because there's a lot of income coming in and then all of a sudden it disappears. And so how, like, from a bank's perspective, that would be a big risk, right?
Yeah. Another great question. So football players are contracted.
Yeah.
1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 4 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So if you're 6 months out and you don't have another contract, then very difficult to get finance.
Really? Okay.
However, if you've got a 1 year contract and we're applying for a loan at the beginning of that 1 year contract, that's fine.
Yeah. Still a 30-year loan?
Still a 30-year loan, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the bank, even though the athletes, even though that most of the majority of people in the bank approving the loans and the rest of it will know who these people are because there's a good chance they've seen them on TV or working on the weekend.
Yeah.
They don't come knocking on your door and tapping you on the shoulder, just the same as everybody else that borrows money over 30 years.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, right? Because they know that these people have a finite professional life, right? Their contracts would finish off in year 8 and year 9. And there's a lot of ambiguity around what is this person going to do after year 8? Might turn themselves into a coach or buy another business or transition into some other business, right? So it's very interesting as to how the risk appetite plays from a bank's perspective.
Yeah. Banks obviously play a big part of it. It's also interesting, like these days, Moss, with the new generation of young kids and the rest of it, if they stay in a job for 2 years.
Yes, that's true.
Or 3 years for some people these days is a lifetime in a job. So
it's interesting that you say that. I was listening to a story that a fellow acquaintance or a fellow colleague was sharing, where a person left their job because his leave wasn't approved, and so they're like, I quit. If you're not approving my leave, I'll just quit. I'm like, what? Like that's a really privileged generation. So I totally get it. I totally understand. And so it's very interesting. Can they still acquire properties after their careers are finished?
Sure. So these days, there's a lot more help and advice and guidance for players coming up to the end of their career.
Okay.
So there's quite a few that study during their career, so that get educated and degrees and trades and things like that.
Yeah.
So when they stop playing football, a lot of them go straight into a business, some sort of work.
Yeah.
A percentage will stay within the club environment. They may have a job. Like you just mentioned, they could join in the coaching or there's like a process, just like anything. Sure. So you start out helping the coach on the sideline and then you learn some things and then you potentially work your way up to a coach. So when they come out, a lot of the boys and girls these days are studying and getting trades and doing degrees and things like that.
And so they have a transition career plan basically mapped out for them.
Yeah, look, if they're managed well and getting good advice, which is we're fortunate enough to be around like some really, really great operators in that space that take a lot of care and look after their athletes. Yeah. Then that transition.
I've seen some athletes turning up into buyer's agents as well. So there's a few of them that are basically taking up a buyer's agent career.
Moss, these days, right? Professional athlete one day, buyer's agents the next. Sure, but there's a lot of other people transitioning from other careers to buyer's agents very quickly as well. So buyer's agents again,
diamond dozen, man.
It's fever pitch with the amount of buyer's agents being produced.
I think you lift a rock and you'll find like 3 buyer's agents.
At the moment
these days. So,
yeah.
You know, and no disrespect to people. There's a lot of people 100%. Doing amazing work in this space.
Yeah.
There is a client out there for everyone, and so I always say this out loud. That ultimately it comes down to the type of service that you're going to provide and the type of service that you're going to get. This is the price that you're going to pay, right? So a lot of these buyer's agency fever that is happening out there is thanks to Buyer's Agent Institute has made it so easier for everyone to basically come out and become a buyer's agent. But everyone thinks that they are a tomboy these days because they've got some growth coming out from COVID, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that is a big red flag for me is when a person says to me, hey, my business is already started off in 2021 or 2022 and I've seen 30% or 50% growth in my properties. Oh, hello, yes, everyone, any Tom, Dick and Harry bought anything in post-COVID has grown in value. So where were you before COVID? What were you doing then is basically the question, right? It's practice before you're preaching as well, right? What have you done for your property portfolio as well?
Yes.
Right? That is what comes down to. How is a blind going to follow the blind when you can't do much or you haven't achieved enough as well? And this is me not talking down. This is me basically putting it out there for people to ask me these questions as well, ask you these questions as well. That's where the credibility comes from, right?
Yeah, and I think time in the market as an operator in the market, so separating from the property market, you learn. You're always learning.
100%.
So coming out of IT and into a buyer's agency, and maybe you've bought 2 or 3 properties, but 15 years of being through markets and
100%.
seeing different titles and different negotiations and different ways to put deals together and the rest of it. There really is no substitute, in my opinion. Again, not having a crack at anybody, but there really is no substitute, in my opinion, for experience.
100%. And I think, I mean, your true experience has been you learned that experience at your own free will as well. Like you got that experience by testing out your own risk appetite first, right? Before you went out there and trying it on clients, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of people.
That was the old way of doing it.
Yeah.
These days you can fast forward all of that.
I know.
I just come out of the institute and say, hey, I'm ready to buy some houses.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting and surprising for me. Like, how would you trust someone making a $500,000, $1 million transaction decision for you when they've been 5 minutes in this space and they've never done major transactions themselves, right? So I say this out loud to everyone out there, that picture a buyer's agent who is buying a property a day versus picture a buyer's agents who have bought 2 properties in their lifetime, right? Like there's a massive difference between the networks, the experience, the potholes, the due diligence. There is so much that the property has to offer. And if you don't value the experience, then go for the cheapest tattoo artist, right? So
no regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Coming back to the original topic. So when you talk about pro athletes, one of the questions that I do have is there is always this stigma, or should I say stereotype, around pro athletes and parties, and these people are high on something, some of the good stuff. So what sort of risk appetites do these people carry? Like, are they high risk takers, or be like, hey, Julian, go out there and buy me 6 properties in 2 months? Is that the risk appetite? They're like, nah, let's do it slow and gradual and build it up slowly and gradually.
Yeah, look, fortunately, one bad apple can taint a whole industry, but
Mike Tyson.
Yeah, all of the professional athletes that we work with are actually super disciplined. Yeah, and not there's no history of partying, and they're not partiers, right?
No stories, Julian. Come on.
No stories whatsoever. Like, actually, a lot of people sort of ask me. It comes a lot. Rugby league is a very, very popular sport here in New South Wales. So a lot of people want to know all these things, and I'm like, I'm really sorry to let you that these guys are like in bed early training when they're not training for the team. They're doing extras so that they can be better and the rest of it. So and a lot of them are in long-term relationships and the rest of it. But in terms of the question about risk appetites, our philosophy and how we built our name and the trust of the people within the industry to work with us is that our risk appetite is somewhat a little bit plain, in the fact that we just want to buy houses that are suited to the owner-occupier and a family today in a good spot. Yeah. Because in 20 years, or in a professional athlete's career, in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, when you have to sell that property, if it appeals to the owner-occupiers, that's 70% of your market, then we should be – nobody has a crystal ball.
Yes.
You know? We can talk about past performance, but we very much focused on providing our investors owner-occupied opportunities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think fundamentally that makes a lot more sense, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I say out loud all the time is, I want the property that 30 people were fighting for.
Correct.
And I bought that property at a fair price, of course, not an overpriced. And I want those 29 people off back into the market, because they are going to be frustrated and they'll make the market go up again, right?
Yeah.
And I have an instant validation that there were 30 people fighting for this property, knowing that when I'm going to sell this property in 10 years down the track, there would at least be 30 people again fighting for this property.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a very interesting distinction. I love that, because these days some BAs are talking about how much they got the discount for and the rest of it. And so I worked for a very prominent, when I first started my career, I worked for a very prominent eastern suburbs buyers agents, and buyers agents were not around back then. Like he was really pushing the envelope of buyers agencies in Australia. Has gone on to be very, very. I don't even think he works anymore. So
sure,
but like,
name the name.
I prefer not to.
Okay,
prefer not to.
Okay.
But it was super influential in giving me advice and stuff. So he's very, and most people put this together anyway, but he's very, very, very active in the eastern suburbs of Sydney.
Sure. Okay. Right? Yeah.
And so what I learned from him was, in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, buying investment properties. So his particular model for investors. So he was only an investor guy. I'm only investor guy. I don't do any owner occupied stuff. He was like, in the eastern suburbs, even back then, if you can buy a property at fair market value in the eastern suburbs, you're doing a good deal.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So in the eastern suburbs, you're not going to get a huge discount.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Coogee, Bondi, Maroubra, Rose Bay, Double Bay, the rest of it. There is no $100,000 discount on prices in those. And so his market was like 2-bedroom apartments with parking, with balconies, with views wherever possible.
Yeah.
There's always, and so if a client paid fair market value 20 years ago, if a client paid a little bit over 20 years ago, or and it sounds like when I'm saying 20 years ago, I'm thinking, am I that old? But if they paid a little bit over, do you think that they're upset these days?
No, 100% not, right?
Right.
You know, it's okay to pay over and buy a quality product than to pay under and buy a dud that you basically regret your list of the right.
Patting yourself on the back that you bought a property nobody else wanted at a bargain basement price.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Like, I mean, if no one wants to buy a property today and you bought it, then what guarantee and surety do you have that this property is going to outperform the market, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be some sort of healthy competition. And I love owner-occupied products because the owner-occupied, I truly believe that the underlying growth is always driven by owner-occupied. They are the one who emotionally invest into properties, pushing the prices up. Investors have volatile nature of, they're like, one day they're flowing off the yields and the other day they're looking at an infrastructure project and they're investing based on that, right? So owner-occupied becomes the backbone of property investing cycle, right?
And the feedback I get in the markets, not necessarily all the markets we operate in, but in the markets where I live and things like that, that the sellers at the moment, the majority have been investors.
Yeah, of course.
Because of the interest rates and the rest. They're the ones that have been selling off.
Yeah.
And they're selling to people trying to get into the market.
100%.
You know, so, yeah.
Look, I mean, if you look at fundamentally, right? And I always go back to the fundamentals, right? Why does property market always grows, right? Property market is the market where everyone wants the market to grow. Everyone. Like even the first home buyers, they want the market to go down when they are buying the property. Once they've bought the property, they want the market to go up as well, right? If you think about it logically, right?
Yeah, very logical,
so if you have like 99, or so I should say 97% of the market that wants the market to go up, where's the market going to go, right?
Yeah.
So it's like irrelevant. Like people only think about buying on the market when they are buying, which is like 3 to 5% at any given point in time, right? Everyone else wants the market to go. And so there is a natural inherent pressure on people paying more when they're going to buy. Look, I mean, I bought a recently upgrade to an owner-occupied property, right? And so this is an interesting story, and I wasn't supposed to share this, but I'm going to share this today. Me and my wife, we went out. She called me. She's found a place, and I was supposed to build a house, and my architect was fluffing me around, and I was like, "Look, man, I know you're busy. I'm just going to go out there and buy so that my wife can basically let me live in peace, right?" And this is a true story. We went out there. She called me on an evening. I finished off work and went back straight to the property. I spent literally 10 minutes there, and I looked at her. I was like, it's perfect. I love the location. I did all my due diligence. It was a tick. I walked out and the guy who was selling was a real estate agent. He was selling his own property as a real estate agent. So there are two real estate agents talking to each other, right? And I shook hands and I said, "Look, I'm going to call you tomorrow and I'm going to offer you a fair price and I'm going to walk away, right?" This is what my wife tells me in the car, okay? I don't want you to act as a buyer's agent in this deal. I like this property. It has taken me 3 months to find this property. Yeah, going out there, squeezing this person because I don't think that I'm going to find any other property like this, right? And so here I'm thinking, Jesus, like I'm the most non-emotional guy in property transactions, right? I walk away from the deals thinking about, Jesus, like it's not value for money, right? But now I understand how owner-occupiers think, right? That, hey, they're emotionally attached to the property. They don't want the frustration. They just want to get in and buy the property. Look, I still negotiated a good deal out of that because he understood where I was coming from.
But it was a very clear mandate.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
From the minister.
100%. And so that's where the owner-occupier value is, right? They are emotionally invested into the deal.
It's an excellent example.
Yeah. And they basically go in, they like something, they'll buy it, and that's it. That's the end of the story, right? They don't go around. And so they'll always overpay, right? I remember I was buying this property for a doctor in Adelaide, right? And his brief was very clean and clear. He wanted to buy in Hallett Cove with a water view. And he said, like, it has to have a water view in place, and it has to be a double-story house on an 890 square meter block. And it was his retirement home. And I was like, okay, cool. And we found this property. And it was listed for $950,000. I valued it and this guy was like, it's open season, right? There were like 15 or 20 offers on the property already, wow. Right? And so I said to him, okay, what would you take? I think his name was Jason. I said, Jason, what would you take? And Jason was like, hey, look, I think I can get this deal done for you at $1,050,000, $1,060,000. And I was like, Jason, you have the deal? Okay, let's close this deal off, okay? Jason's like, perfect, I'm going to write the contract, blah, blah, blah. He took the deal to the owner. The owner was like, nah, I'm going to take this to auction. I don't like this deal, okay? So my doctor client is like, hey, how about you offer him 1.1? And I was like, no, this property is now gone. It's going to sell for like 1.2, 1.3. He's like, no, it's not possible. And so we went to the auction. The property sells for $1.35 million.
Wow.
Right? And so I was ready to pay 1.1, but it just like, that's how the owner-occupier market thinks, right? When it comes to real growth, that's how the market basically responds. And so I love where you are coming from, where you're buying quality product, which is owner-occupier market, because you are almost guaranteeing that fundamentally there would always be demand in these areas and people would always do well. Yeah,
so it's not hard to, it's very well documented, Moss, very well documented. We have an undersupply in houses.
100%.
Your logic, it was perfect. Just a few comments ago. It's a perfect logic. Everybody in the market wants it to go up.
Yeah.
It's also so well documented that there's not enough houses.
Yeah.
So it's really basic.
Yes.
Supply and demand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so if I wrap this up,
sure.
What are the final words you would say to any pro athlete or a coach listening to you right now? What would be your golden words?
My golden words would be you're exceptional at what you do. You're at the very peak of your industry.
Not me, the athlete.
The athlete. You too, Moss. You too. You got there because you had a single focus of being the best you could be. Work with us because that's our single focus, and we want to get the same results. We're competitive, we're professional, and we would like to help you get the very best results. Yeah.
This was Julian from Property 360. Thank you very much, Julian.
Thank you, Moss. That was great. I really enjoyed that.
This was awesome. And for people, viewers and listeners, if you have any questions, comments, queries, please reach out to Julian from Property 360. If you have any stories to share, please jump on our socials and share some of your stories. If you worked with a pro athlete before, on what do you think? Or if you're a pro athlete and if you want to share your story, please reach out. Thank you for listening to us today. Take care, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing. This is Moss and Julian checking out. Adios.
Thank you.